Hey, all you cool cats and kittens out there. So I'm sorry I had to do that. For all of you who are stuck at home, seeing the Tiger King, you know what I'm talking about. For everyone else, I'm sorry, I just had to. But I want to welcome you to the webinar today. And so, well, what we're going to be talking about today is some strategies that we can be doing at home to help better protect ourselves and to stay healthy while we're stuck at home. It's crazy times out there right now, and a lot of people are stressed. A lot of people. There's a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty out right now. But a big disclaimer before we get rolling, before we get started, the advice that I'm going to give you today is in no way, and I don't want it to be taken as treatment for the COVID. In fact, we are not talking about how to treat, cure, or prevent any kind of infectious disease. That's not what we're talking about today. This is in no way a treatment for it. And in fact, this isn't even to prevent it, or it's not going to keep you from getting COVID. What we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about strategies in order to make us healthier or to improve our health. In fact, if you think that you're exposed or if you were exposed, I can't stress enough. I want you to get the proper medical testing and the proper medical care is what I want you to do. With that being said as well, we're going to be talking a little bit at the beginning about the COVID and some facts about it. Now, disclaimer again, I'm not an immunologist, and I'm not an immunologist. I'm not an expert on infectious diseases, but what I am an expert on is I'm an expert on healthy living and diet and lifestyle and wellness. As a chiropractor, we're a drugless profession, and that's what we specialize in. Is we specialize in helping people uh, live a healthy, drug-free lifestyle. Is the ultimate goal. What we want to do. But what I'm going to go through is I'm going to give you the truth as I know it, and there's a lot of information out there. So I'm going to try to help give you some good information from good quality sources, because if we understand the boogeyman a little bit, it's not quite as scary. Uh, I want people to understand you shouldn't panic. We shouldn't be panicking right now, but we should be taking this serious, and we should be doing the proper things to protect us and our family is what we should be doing. But what we do know, and what they keep reporting, and you're probably familiar with it and seen it, is the biggest thing, the biggest determining factor on what your outcome will be and how well you'll be able to handle this if you're ever infected is if you have an underlying health condition. And some of the biggest examples, this is off the CDC's website, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, hypertension has actually been a really big one. Any autoimmune disease, chronic lung disease, or asthma. What they've really found is it's really a unhealthy immune system that overreacts is what's happened. And another stat was out of 71% of the people who had to be hospitalized, or 78%, the CDC said three of the biggest things that they all had in common was they either had diabetes, chronic lung disease, or they had heart disease. And so those are three of the biggest ones that were the biggest contributing factor for poor outcomes. And some more stats. I don't want this to just be a stat session where I'm just throwing all this at you, but there's a reason why we're going through this. But 60% of adults had at least one underlying health condition in this study, and 399 with at least one additional disease had 79% greater chance of requiring intensive care or respirator or both. And and not just one chronic disease. Straight off the CDC, 4 in 10 adults in the U.S. actually don't just have one, but they have two chronic diseases. And so one of the biggest things with these chronic diseases is there's a lot of it is diet and lifestyle, or lifestyle factors. In fact, the CDC goes on to say things that put you at a higher risk to be in one of these categories is tobacco use, poor nutrition, lack of physical activity, lack of exercise, or being sedentary, or excessive alcohol use. All of these put you at this really high risk of developing one of these chronic conditions. And so the well, really the big question is like, why is this virus such a big deal? Why is it so hard to kill? And so one of the big things with this virus is kind of like what I was saying before in the disclaimer, whenever I said we're not telling you a treatment, because there is not a treatment at this point. And that's part of the reason why this virus is such a big deal. It's new to being found in humans. It mutated and crossed over from animals. So that's part of the problem is our immune system has never encountered this virus before. Therefore, we don't have natural antibodies and a defense against it. And so the reason why this is called COVID-19, where the 19 comes from, is this virus is actually discovered in 2019. Where the name corona comes from, it's actually from the corona family of virus. There's actually been a couple of others. But if you look at the picture over here on the screen right here, you see these little spike-like structures sticking up from it. And so if you're looking at the virus under a microscope, that's what you'd see. That's where the corona name comes from, is corona means crown. And so it's named after those spike-like structures sticking up because they say it looks like a crown. But that's actually part of how this virus is so effective, is those little spikes that are sticking up allows it to attach to receptors in our cells and allows it to be more get in our body easier. So those cells actually help that virus do what it's trying to do. But this is a little article from the Washington Post that was talking about once the virus is inside of us, it can make over 10,000 copies of itself in an hour. So what I want you to understand with a virus isn't like a bacteria. A virus isn't actually alive. It needs a host in order to be able to take over, reproduce itself, and hopefully what it's trying to do, well, not hopefully for us, but what its goal is it wants to hijack your body. It's kind of, and it doesn't necessarily want to kill the host. It's damaging your body. It's almost like a bunch of frat boys that want to come into your house and have this party, just tear the place up, but just have a really good time before they move on to the next party, is what it's wanting to do. So what a virus is going to do, it's going to come inside our cells and it's going to hijack that cell. It's going to hijack your DNA and it's going to force your body to produce more of the virus, is what it's going to do. And whenever that happens, it's going to create damage to your body, whatever tissue that is. This one just happens to love the lungs, but whatever virus it is, whatever part of your body it is hijacking that, forcing it to reproduce it, and then it's looking for the new host, whatever that vector is. But but really what makes this one so bad is this one's vector is it's through the air. And what makes this one bad too is that this one has a long, what we call an incubation period. And so if you ever hear the word incubation period, what that means is you were exposed to it and you're growing them inside your body, but you might not actually show symptoms yet. In fact, they've shown that some young, healthy people might be contagious, and there's potential you might not ever show a symptom. And so that's the reason why this one's been such a difficult one to deal with. In fact, this study right here showed that that the mean, or like the average case, went five days with through an incubation period. So that means this person could have potentially been walking around exposing people and never even had any idea that they were even contagious. And so that's part of what this one, and that's part of the reason why they've said stay at home and told everyone to do their part and to stay away, because the virus doesn't move itself. We move the virus, but the problem is we might not even know we're moving that virus. And so this one in particular, a lot of viruses don't do well outside the body. Yeah, there's a lot that if it's outside the body, the virus just quickly falls apart and doesn't make it. This one's different though, and so that's part of what makes this one bad too. Not only could you, one, have it, not know that you have it and spreading around. Two, on this study, aerosols, it means airborne. Someone coughed, sneezed, they sent it airborne. It could be active for up to 3 hours, 4 hours on copper, or up to 24 hours on plastic, stainless steel, and cardboard. And so that's the reason why it's so important for us to be diligent about washing our hands. making sure that we're avoiding touching our face or mouth, because if someone would have that had it, had it on their hands, touch something, you come behind them and touch it, you touch the active version of it, you potentially could get it, especially if you rub your eyes or touch your mouth. But the reported symptoms of this virus, they typically don't appear for 2 to 14 days after exposure. And typically it's a fever, a cough. And what they mean by a cough is like a dry cough. And unfortunately, it's at a bad time. We've got allergy season. And the one thing that this thing typically hasn't had runny nose. What they mean by a dry cough is people are coughing, but it's not really coughing anything up. And then the worst symptom of all is shortness of breath. And so with the shortness of breath, that's really when you need to seek medical attention. Especially in the CDC even lays it out here: trouble breathing, persistent pain or pressure in the chest, the blushed lips or face. That means that you're not getting enough oxygen to your face, especially if your lips are turning blue. That's when it's literally an emergency. That's whenever you literally need to seek medical care. But no, enough talking about the doom and gloom and about it. Really, what I want to talk about is I want to talk about health strategies now. And so, really, a good protocol for you to do whenever you go out and about. First of all, stay home. Second of all, whenever you come home, because you just saw how I can live on things, take your shoes off before entering the house. Use alcohol. And so this virus, it's actually contained. It has a fat outside of it. And so even just your regular dish soap, they've shown that washing your hands for up to 2 minutes will actually break apart this the outer part, and actually cause the virus to break apart and become an inactive virus. And so using alcohol, washing your hands, all those are really your number one defense. And try to minimize how much you're exchanging things whenever you go out to the essential stores and you're buying things. You'll see everyone wearing the gloves. And so with the gloves, you have to remember, in the medical field, when we work on a patient, we work on one patient and then we throw the gloves away, because we don't want to take anything from that patient and take it to the next. If you're wearing gloves and you're going around and the teller is checking everything out, someone has it, they touch their stuff, and they touch your stuff, and then they touch the next, they can still have that on the gloves. So that's where we want to minimize how much we're touching and sharing or touching things that other people have touched. Go straight to washing things. And really just, we want to minimize our chance of exposure. And I can't stress enough, whenever you're out in public, I want you to go and wash your hands immediately, is what I want you to do. But what I want to talk about as far as our health, as far as being healthy, because we talked about typically right now, especially when we're at home, it would be really easy to fall into bad habits, to not exercise. And trust me, I'm human, I get it. It's really easy not to start eating all the snacks, all the quarantine snacks. And all this stuff is going to go against our body, and it's going to hurt our chances on staying healthy, because we want to give our bodies the best chance that it has. If God forbid us or our family is exposed, we want to have the best chance that we have to be able to try to fight this thing off, which just means being just as healthy as we can going in. And that's the part that I want to talk about. But the big thing that I want you to think of is anything that you eat that your body doesn't recognize. Basically, if it came in a box, if it's unnatural, if it's not building our bodies up, then it's a stressor, and our body has to deal with it. And that's what we're trying to minimize. We're trying to minimize these unhealthy stressors that can have bad effects on our health. And the thing we want to think about our health is it's kind of like a bank account. So everything we do that's healthy, when we exercise, when we eat right, whenever we manage our stress, all these healthy things is like building up this bank account. And so when we have this big healthy bank account, we can afford to take some withdrawals here or there. The thing is, though, is if we're going paycheck to paycheck because we never did anything to be healthy, and especially if we have one of these preventative underlying conditions, it's like being paycheck to paycheck. We can't afford to have this extra stressor that's laid on top of. So that's the way I want you to think about your health. Is I'm building up my health is my investment. I'm building it up just like I would my bank account. But things to do to in order to boost our health, we want to avoid fake processed foods. Basically, what I tell people is, if it didn't come that way in nature, if it didn't swim, if it didn't grow in the ground, if it didn't walk this earth, we really just need to avoid it. Things don't come from the earth in a box. And the thing is too is, whenever you read the back of a box on all these processed foods, you almost, I mean, you literally do have to be a chemist to know all the ingredients. So honestly, the rule that I tell people is, if you have to have your PhD in chemistry, if you don't understand what that says on that ingredient, your body doesn't either, and your body's gonna have to deal with it. It's not good for us. We want to avoid simple sugars. We're going to talk a little bit more about how sugars affect our health, but we all inherently know things that are really sugary aren't good for us. We want to limit our alcohol consumption, just like the CDC said. Avoid anything that we might have food sensitivities to. There's allergies, and there's also food sensitivities. And if you have a known food sensitivity, then we definitely need to avoid those. We need to get regular exercise. If they're honestly, with exercise and what it does with our body, and all these little points that we're going to go through, what we're going to do, today my goal is to do kind of a general broad overview to get this started, and then we can do future webinars and break down each one and really kind of get specific with each one of these to make sure that we're doing the right type of exercise, the right things. But right now we're doing a general overview. But if you could take all the health benefits that exercise has and put it in a pill, you wouldn't be able to keep it on the shelves. It literally does that much for our bodies. We've got to be able to get plenty of sleep. Sleep's super important. Most of our body's healing and most of our body's growth is literally while we're asleep. And the really big one right now, because just the gravity of everything that's going on in everyone's lives right now, is we've got to manage stress. And so we're going to talk a lot about stress today, just because there's actually types of stress, and people usually don't even think about the types of stress. They just generally only think of stress as being they generally only think of stress as just being an emotional thing. Sorry about that. And so this is just kind of a funny picture right here, but the old adage, stress yourself sick, it's a real thing. The stress, everyone kind of innately knows stress is bad for us. You know, the thing that I always ask, especially parents, like we can all attest to this. When do you snap at your kids? Like when can you tolerate a lot of things? Is it whenever you're well rested, you feel great? No, of course not. But whenever we typically we can't handle these added stresses is whenever our bodies are wore down. We're tired. We generally don't do well with these things. But the types of stress we've got, first cut, we have emotional stress, and that's the type that everyone thinks about. And so, well, we can go deeper in a later day and strategies about how to deal with this, but we're always going to have some component of stress. It's just a part of everyday life, but it's really how we deal with it. But the other two big ones that we absolutely can control is your chemical stress and your physical stress. So our chemical stress, that's literally everything our body's exposed to. And we can definitely control what we put in our mouth. Going back to the processed foods, all those are chemicals that you're putting in your body, and we can definitely limit what's going into our body. And as far as the physical stress, we can get our sleep, we can exercise, we can build our bodies up. Because when we build our bodies up and we're sitting there making all of these good, healthy deposits, and we build up this big, healthy bank account, we can sure deal with that emotional side over there a lot better. But one of the, and this is going into the chemical side of it right here, but I told you I would talk more about blood sugar because blood sugar is really big. Eating these processed foods typically are really high in carbs, really high in sugar. That's what most people don't realize is a carb is a carb. A carb eventually becomes sugar. Now there's different kinds of carbs. It all becomes sugar. It's just how quickly it gets there. But the worst one is your refined white sugar because that just spikes the blood sugar. It's just like just goes straight up on our blood sugar. But what they found, and here's a study right here, that both lower glucose, which is glucose is sugar, so that's just saying lower blood sugar, and insulin therapy, the that affected that had a that lowered inflammation is what that's saying right here. And so when I'm talking about inflammation, inflammation is unhealthy for our body. Well, when I'm saying inflammation, it's just like if you sprain your ankle and your ankle swells up like a beach ball. That's inflammation. If that's a localized inflammation, we're talking about global inflammation. So essentially your body's on fire. And that's what high blood sugar can do, is it causes all this inflammation that leads to all kinds of damage to our body. But and just how damaging this blood sugar can be right here, it's just kind of like these little Vikings down here running around doing on this little cartoon thing doing damage. That's a blood vessel right there. And so just like those guys are doing, it's damaging to our bodies. And how damaging it can be, this is actually new latest research. There's been such a link and correlation with Alzheimer's. They're actually starting to consider Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. That's how damaging that this high blood sugar can be to our bodies. So some examples of inflammatory foods, not just sugar. Your refined sugar, we just talked about that. Your processed foods, any food sensitivities, dairy and gluten, those aren't necessarily always inflammatory in everyone, but they're most commonly inflammatory. Typically people don't do as well with those, and they tend to be more inflammatory. Our unhealthy trans fats, our unhealthy fats are extremely inflammatory. Artificial sweeteners like your sucralose, aspartame, and our food colors and dyes can be extremely inflammatory and bad for our health. So some examples of food that we need to be eating, and foods that really, what I tell people is we're going to talk a little bit about supplementation. And supplements are great, but a supplement should be what it sounds like. It should supplement for nutrients that we're not getting from our food. But food should be number one. Most of our vitamins and our minerals and stuff should come from our food. And so I always tell people we want to kind of eat the rainbow. And we want to eat wild caught fish. We don't want farm raised fish. And the reason why we don't want farm raised fish is because they live in an overcrowded fish farm, and they typically feed them grains, which most of your fish out in the wild don't eat that. So it completely changes the fat content. So you take salmon, for instance, that's typically really high in our healthy omega fats. You've got your wild caught, but they've actually shown that your farm raised, the omegas are totally different. They actually have more omega-6 than 3, and 6 tends to be more inflammatory. So I always tell people you want to stick with the wild caught, like what nature gave us. We want to eat plenty of fruits and vegetables. And I always tell people we want to eat the rainbow, because your green leafy vegetables have a lot of vitamin A versus your fruits have more minerals. We want to get a good assortment and a good blend of everything. So I always tell people eat the rainbow, eat veggies with multiple colors. We want to keep our a high fiber intake. That's just good for our healthy gut, and actually our gut bacteria. And probiotics is all the rage, but our fiber is actually what our bacteria eat inside our gut to have a good healthy gut. And grass-fed meats are always better. It's the exact same thing as our farm-raised salmon. We want our good grass-fed meats whenever we're going to eat our meats. So Some good supplements, especially for right now, where we're worried with inflammation, immune system health. Some good supplements that has been linked with health and immune system. Vitamin C, everyone's heard of vitamin C. Does multiple things, helps with immune health, but really it's also an antioxidant as well. The and the other one that I'm going to skip down, liposomal glutathione. Now you really want the liposomal form because that just helps with the delivery. But glutathione is one of our body's biggest antioxidants, and so whenever we get sick or when we have inflammation, it's going to cause free radicals and it's going to cause what we call oxidative damage. So I want you to kind of think about it. The easy way to think about it is kind of like a nail rusting. And so what these two do is it keeps that from happening. It essentially bites the bullet for you, and it helps keep that inflammation down. The zinc's another good one. Vitamin A, omega threes, and actually don't have, or no, I do have vitamin D. Vitamin D is huge, and we don't get it really. The vitamin A and the vitamin D are really big ones because those are called essential vitamins. Your A, D, E, and K are all essential vitamins. And the reason why they're called essential vitamins is because our bodies don't make them. We have to get them from outside sources. And so not a lot of sources. There's a little bit in mushrooms that have D3, but we get it from sunlight. And so that's another reason why exercising outside and especially staying indoors. Now we're coming out of the winter. And so typically people are covered up, they're not outside, so our vitamin D levels are a little bit lower during the winter. So we're coming into this, so we definitely, vitamin D is one of the biggest ones. The recommended, just to keep it at the same levels, about 2,000 IUs. I always tell people to do about 4,000 IUs, especially now. We haven't been outside, we're coming out of the winter, we want to raise our vitamin D levels up. And typically I always tell people I prefer it to be with K2. K2 helps with our absorption and delivery. And some good anti-inflammatory supplements. Melatonin, we talked about how important it is for us to be sleeping. Melatonin actually helps us sleeping, but it's also anti-inflammatory. Or vitamin C also helps with inflammation. Resveratrol. Resveratrol is actually the anti-inflammatory part. It's extracted out of grapes, and it's a great anti-inflammatory. Curcumin is another really great one, and even stacking those two together has been shown to be really beneficial. Curcumin's extracted out of turmeric. PEA is kind of a newer one. That one's a really good one. Your omegas, CBD, and good old glutathione again, and all of these are great to help decrease inflammation inside of our body. So that's really what I have prepared for you today, and we're going to be doing more of these. What I want you to feel free if you have any questions. If you feel free to reach out to us. We have multiple locations. Myself, I can personally be reached at Dr. D. Bruner, that's DRD Bruner at gmail.com. But really what our goal is we want to bring you good, solid, quality information is what we want to do. So if you feel like this was beneficial, just please go out, give us a review, Yelp, Facebook, kind of pass on the word. Just because that's our biggest goal right now. We're all trying to stay healthy, and I want to give you all the best quality information I can as I learn it. And be watching out for more of these. We're going to be diving a little bit deeper every time.